Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant. The plans that George Lucas had for the sequel trilogy were abandoned by Disney, and all of his expanded universe stuff was decanonized.
Including this.
Well, it's never been mentioned in the movies, so it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's inadmissible as evidence.
Disney is a lot more than the movies, Mr. Drinker.
Well, as we have our witness here, you can ask our witness.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Lucas, what was your intention to do with the wills?
Well,
with your next trilogy.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that the original idea was that the midichlorians and the wills were able to tap into the Force. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It's the biological connection to the Force, and it's a very simple concept to understand. The midichlorians and the wills are not the Force; they can just tap into it.
Okay.
But if someone was born with a very high amount of midichlorians, could they maybe be a Force savant, like Doug Hoffman and Rain Man or something with the Force?
Your Honor, what bearing does this have on my statement? The prosecution?
It has perfect bearing, Your Honor. A high midichlorian count could, within the possibility of canon, essentially explain every single thing that Ray does in the franchise. Thank you very much.
Now, it's my understanding that a high midichlorian count grants you Force powers, to be sure, but you have to learn how to wield them. You have to learn how to access them. That is where the training comes in.
Yes, if I may, Your Honor.
Yes, go on.
That was always my intention, that the midichlorians are able to focus the energy, but they do not transmit knowledge or ability.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
You can certainly learn from someone who is Force adept, and otherwise, young Anakin would have been the most powerful Jedi ever at the age of 7 years old.
Which he was. He blew up a freaking droid ship all by himself.
No,
I think the starfighter that he was in with its torpedoes probably had a big part to play in that.
He would have stayed on Tatooine and not done anything.
A creative decision was made by our client to have Palpatine influencing the ultimate outcome and growth of Rey in ways that she does not know, using the dark side of the Force, which, as we all know, is very mysterious.
Well, like I said, the midichlorians do not transmit good story ideas either.
That's true, Your Honor. An omission of guilt in a small way. It's just very clear that the idea and decision to begin retconning Star Wars and its lore and the ideas about the Force began with George Lucas himself. And Disney has only continued to do within the parameters of what we saw as acceptable, and perhaps we went too far. But we just did what George did.
Yeah. Well, my question on this one is very simple. Like on the example of the hyperspace ram maneuver, which we saw in the Last Jedi, do you guys all accept that if you have the ability to do that, simply crash one ship into a fleet of ships and obliterate all of them through the power of the ramming technique, that rather changes the dynamics of space battles forever within Star Wars.
In our third movie,
and not for the better.
We don't agree that they employ all of these devices properly. But bad writing, I think, is a separate issue from just the lore.
Well, I guess my argument would be that bad writing and lore breaking go hand in hand generally. I will have to say, though, unfortunately, the defense's entire argument is inadmissible in this case on the grounds that at no point, at any point during their entire extremely lengthy diatribe did they ever mention the word lore or even touch upon the subject. Therefore, everything they said was completely irrelevant to this case. And
objection, Your Honor. The very first thing I said was that it was asked by the fans to adjust the lore that was being adjusted by George Lucas. He began the adjustment of the lore. We just continued. We tried to adjust it back to a place that people would love. It's not our fault that they didn't.
Let's settle this right now, Mr. Lucas. You've heard the prosecution and defense. Can you help us with this one?
The thing is, I don't think this is a case of, George Lucas did it bad, so Disney is off the hook. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, it's not my position to argue one side or the other. I am like the Force. I have a dark side and a light side, so I can respond either way. The problem is that my lore that I created was mine to do with as I saw fit, and the problem with that was that the reaction from the prequels was not very good, at least not as much as I had hoped. So naturally, I wanted to sell the whole damn thing. What they did afterwards, I don't really have a say in, obviously, and I just find it funny that people are arguing over these little things like Mandalorians, or I'm sorry, midichlorians. I get confused by that sometimes. That it's these are all sort of mechanical things that I was coming up with to sort of explain the world that I'd created. And whether you react positively or negatively, you just have to admit that when the sequel movies came out, you were begging for Ewoks again. So that's all I have to say about that.
Mr. Lucas, when you wrote the script for Return of the Jedi, and at the end when Emperor Palpatine was blasted by his own Force lightning and thrown down the reactor shaft into the exploding Death Star, did you intend for him to be killed?
Well, I don't, a fall like that probably would decimate many people. I'm not exactly sure as to the outcome from that. I'm sure I could have come up with a better way to bring him back. But, I think that the Force can answer for many questions. And it's a dramatic thing. It's a story thing. I think you have to assume that he was destroyed in that. But who knows? He could have had other clones of himself that he could have jumped into. Who knows? There's many ways that Palpatine could have returned, and I just was confused by the way he did.
Mr. Lucas, members of our jury are referencing an explosion that occurred after Emperor Palpatine fell down the bottomless chasm. Care to explain?
Well, his robes were made of very fire-inducing materials, and I'm sure that was what the explosion was.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. No further questions.
Plus, Your Honor, you mentioned that it was a bottomless chasm, so he had clearly fallen all the way through and avoided the explosion of the Death Star.
Wow.
Thank you for that theory, Mr. Ng. And Mr. Lucas, my understanding is you really have no dog in this fight. But if you care to make any comment on today's proceedings, just to add context, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sorry, I just got back to the desk. I was checking out the price of Disney stock. Look, I think that the question is that do you like the direction that Star Wars was going when I was involved, or do you like better the direction that it went after I wasn't? And I think that's the big question. Was the the white slavers, were they responsible for taking it a direction you didn't like? I think they did all they could to sort of eliminate my needs, and look, that's their prerogative. They paid good money for it, but I think that the direction that everything went is their decision, and I think the question is, if you like that direction, then you'll vote for the defense, and if you don't like that direction, then you'll vote for the prosecution. I think it's very simple.